body image piece about, oh, you're not thin enough. Oh my God, you never, you got fat legs, you got a big bum. We're in scantily, we're scantily clad, and nobody cares if you have a big bum. The question is, can you get your bum up that pole? Oh, well, I've had many, but by the time I was finished, I owned my own business for quite a long time. So I owned a consultancy, and we specialized in leadership development, culture change, and executive coaching. So working with big corporates in their leadership stream, which unfortunately, these days I'm looking at leadership and going, wow, how did we get there?
Oh, tell us more. Interesting.
I think we've talked a lot about, how have we wound up in this situation internationally or globally, which is sort of centered in one country, of course. And I think the conclusion I've reached, fairly or not fairly, is a lot of this has got to do with the way that we choose leaders. And so we've for a long time, we've persisted in choosing charismatic leaders, and we often haven't looked at the human side of that. They're charismatic, they're money focused, they may talk the talk of being people focused, but when we see the policies that they support, the policies they implement, what they do with money in the organization, what they do with profit, it calls into question the way we choose leaders. And I'd hope that by now we might be choosing leaders that we'd call servant leaders. And the hallmark of a servant leader is that the people who shine are the people within the organization who are doing great work, not the leader themselves. So I think in choosing this charismatic leadership, we've gone down a path that's led us to, the verge of autocracy and, in I guess what we could right now call the number one power in the world. So, that's not a good place for us to be globally. The upside of that is, okay, he might turn out to be a unifier, but in the meanwhile, rendering the U.S. irrelevant. So I guess, for all of us, we have to pick up our game and decide who we're going to be, what we're going to stand for. I'm also sad about the lack of female leadership, and that's a whole other topic, but it probably matches that conversation about, charismatic leadership.
Okay.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I think in any part of the world, right, because most people don't have that, they don't have that ability to speak out, and so they admire someone who is able to speak out, right?
So now I'm retired I've retired to paradise. It is very nice. I love it up here. And the sun's not out today, but it's fabulous to live here. And I've shifted my attention now to more healthy aging is what I like to think about. Healthy aging.
Nice. How long have you been living in Australia?
30 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I moved here in my late 30s. I as a Canadian, I just wanted, I laugh and I say I'm a weather refugee. I think that's fairly accurate. You've had a lot of your life in 40 below. You go, okay, that's enough now. I better change that. And I was fortunate enough to be able to choose where I lived.
Yeah.
A privilege that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah.
But I chose, and in those days it was relatively easy to get here. A wonderful place to live.
Okay.
So you've been, Nancy, in your industry, like as a leader, and in a leader position in a real male-dominating, industry as well. How long were you in that industry for?
Consulting's probably a little more balanced male-female, but it still is male-dominant, and you're certainly working with men in power a lot. Yeah. I was in the consulting game for, let's think now, about 20 years, the last 20 years of my career. Women over the age of 50 or women as they retire are retiring into poverty. So that's a huge concern for me. Yeah. But certainly as part of my coaching journey, I spent a lot of time with young women in leadership talking about how to set themselves up, with how to be successful, not just in the corporate game, but how do you then use your power and influence, and money is part of that power. How do you use that to ensure that you have that you're taken care of, that you have your own back?
Yeah. And what were some of the valid points like that you would give just to the average woman in that position?
The same ones I would give them to. I'm a big believer that whether you're married or not, that you need to earn your own money. And with that money, you need to educate yourself around how to manage and how to invest money. Because at the end of the day, that nest egg that you're building for yourself, that has to, protect you, take care of you. I know, I'm divorced. I know you're divorced. So, the experience of divorce is an interesting one because it really reminds you, am I able to take care of myself? Have I delegated the finances to the man in the relationship? I know we want to trust that men are going to do the right thing. My experience is they don't always do the right thing. I have a number of girlfriends that could tell you readily that they absolutely don't do the right thing. And so you need to do the right thing for yourself. And I guess for a lot of women, I haven't had children. So I think for a lot of women, this is where things, how do you take care of your children, but still take care of yourself? So that's a lot of the work that I did with women is make sure you've got your own bank account, make sure you're regularly feeding into that. So I'm a big believer in saving, make sure that you educate yourself around money. And I mean how to have your money make money for you and never let that nest egg go. So protect it, whether you have to put it in trusts, whatever you have to do, a damn good accountant, who's concerned about you. And then I think, beyond that, the family piece is about you have separate money, which is really the family piece. And I know that can be really hard because mortgages are high and so on. But I think, again, women are educating themselves. So, it's that piece around make sure you've always got your own nest egg and do not let somebody else tap into your personal nest egg and give up the idea that that's selfish. It's not selfish. It's common sense. Yeah. It's just common sense to have a little nest egg sitting there and growing just in case. I think I was talking to somebody this week and they called their mother, gave them that advice and they called it the freedom fund. I think that's a good way to think about it. You want to have a little freedom fund sitting there. And then if you never have to use it, you can use it for something else. Have fun with it. That's okay. It's still freedom.
Yeah.
I know I was given pretty much similar advice when I was 21, but it was from the lady that set up my super fund. And, I was in early days with my relationship, and that was with the man that I ended up marrying. But it's the way that we're conditioned. It's like, you're just pulling everything together. And like she said to me back then, she called it a runaway account. And she said, you just need to have something there. And I thought, oh, God, no. Like, no, I'm not running away. Like, I was boots in all, And same as, like, I was very transparent. What I've got is ours and vice versa. Not even believing that later on down the track, nothing, I didn't think anything would happen. I just thought my marriage later on was, safe and secure. Little did I know, like, as Nancy knows, I had to start all over again, which is really hard, at 55. So I know Nancy has, said to me a couple of times about what investments have you got? Can you, look at other ways? There's in groups with women who, invest that pull their money together. Obviously, you've got to do your homework. So, Nancy, I know that there's lots of women out there listening that, and men too. It's not just for women, but, share the same advice that you gave me about, like, okay, I don't have enough to buy a house or anything like that there, nor will I be able to afford a mortgage. But how can you make what little money that you have aside grow and feel like that you're contributing? You can see some sort of growth there for you, that you've got that little bit of reassurance financially for down the track.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm not a financial advisor, so I never give you financial advice per se. So I think it's kind of a three-step thing. So number one, always save. And it's funny because I was a big believer. And look, I made very good money, so it may sound like it was a little easier for me. Although, like you, I've started over in my life at least three times, right? So I know what it is to be kind of brought to ground and then have to, kind of build from damn near nothing. So it takes a kind of boldness. But the first one is save. And if you can, save 10% of what you earn. Like that would be a good first step. The second step would be find a really good financial advisor. And I really love women financial advisors. I'm not saying they're the only one, but I think women relate to women and women's struggles very, very well. And most women who are financial advisors, I suspect, have, found themselves in bad relationships and can understand where women are coming from. And the third thing, and by the way, if that doesn't work for you, find an investment group. and get a group of women going, and then invest your money wisely. And what I mean by that is if you don't have enough, that's okay. You can often join with other people. And so there are a lot of women investment groups out there who, have women at all ages who are talking about how specifically would you invest your money? How do you ensure you protect your money when you're investing it? And how do you ensure that, well, I guess, the protecting is nobody else can get that money, but also how do we maximize the returns and minimize your tax on that money? So that's kind of my three things that I would say to any woman. And I would also say start young. Yeah. So it would be great if you're a mom of a daughter, I'd be saying this to my daughters. I would be saying to them, you're X age, I'll contribute some money, you match it. As soon as you get a job, you match it, you start developing that habit, because habits are everything. Alina, you're the one who would say that to me. Habits are everything. It's everything about your health, everything about money, everything about your well-being. Your daily habits determine your life. Yeah. And get to develop some good habits. Good news, though, you can still do it at any age.
Yeah. In Singapore, the term financial advisor are given to people who are insurance agents, which I find a little bit problematic because there is a conflict of interest, because they will always be wanting to sell you a product. They're not going to give you financial advice that's going to, I have so many friends who are financial advisors, right, in the insurance trade. But you want someone who is completely, they don't have an agenda where they're trying to sell a product. And I think that is very rare here in Singapore. So are there financial advisors who are not tagged to any products available? Maybe, Zoom consultation, or do you do that?
So you'll find in Australia, and again, I'll be true in Canada, you can find independent financial advisors. You pay them a fee to give you good advice. They're not trying to sell you any product, although they may present you with a range of products.
Yeah.
They might do that, but ultimately the choice would be yours. So the way I've handled that in Australia, and you can do the same, for example, in Canada, is I have a self-managed super fund. So I'm actually the ultimate arbiter of my money. I have not delegated the authority for what happens up to my money to someone else or to a series of products. When I did that in the past, I really got stung. And I got stung on leverage as well. So just be really careful how you leverage your money, where you put your money. And I agree with you. You want an independent financial advisor. It's better to pay them a fee and get neutral advice. And you might have to shop. You may have to shop for someone who fits for you. And I think that's important to remember. So most financial advisors that I've worked with aren't affiliated with banks, not affiliated with insurance companies, although they will sometimes give you advice about insurance, if you feel you need to do that. So I think it's just, you need to think about, how do I do this in a way that ensures I don't pay excessive fees, but I am paying the right person who's really concerned about my well-being. And I think you can tell from the outcomes pretty quickly. Within a year or two, you can tell whether you're with the right person or not. Your money's either growing, or it's stagnating, or it's going backwards. One of those three things is happening. So I think that's but you're right. You need to find somebody who's nicely independent.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting, Nancy, because over the couple of years I've, been training you, you've always said the same thing about supporting the other woman, about, making sure that she's got, structured, sound advice, because there's a lot of women that I know, even listening to some of your stories, and you've heard some of mine as well, where, the woman's the underdog and there's nowhere for her to turn. And I know that you'll come to her aid to try and help, support her and get her through, because, it's such a difficult situation. And I find that a lot of women are like that as well. So you'll get women, obviously, who are corporate, but then what happens if things change? And then the rug gets pulled from underneath them. So that's where things really start to shine. Like, people might appear that they've got it all, but then when it hits a fan, do they really? Have they got things set in place? And, it's a real conflict of some of the conditioning thoughts that we've been led to believe and grow up with. In my generation, it was like, you get married, you live on one wage, the mother stays at home, looks after the babies, and then has a career. And then, so then later on that changed. So then when the woman was becoming a little bit more independent, you know, she might get a second job. So that will help contribute towards the household things. But God forbid if she had anything for herself, because mothers then were always portrayed as put yourself last. You know, the family comes first. And then so the role of the female is starting to change a little bit, where I think now it's starting to become more acceptable for a woman to have her own money and to be financially independent without being looked down upon. You know, if she's got a family, she's doing her own things. So I think now is a really good way to, you know, really good timing to help, you know, stress the fact that, you know, it is okay to do this, and really help support other women, you know, who are going down, you know, that road, because, you know, they don't go down that road by choice. They go around from the situation, the circumstances that happen around them. But, you know, when there's a supportive group or someone there to help them, you know, and I think also too, when there's more knowledge available, you know, for women out there, it helps them start to look even before things like that start to go a bit pear-shaped.
I think that's right. I come from a slightly different background, because while my background was impoverished, my father was a farmer. My mom was always the primary breadwinner. So although my mom gave me advice of, you know, things like, you need to, you know, you'll be a secretary, or certainly that kind of advice about, you know, you're just the girl. At the same time, what I witnessed and what she would say to me is, make sure you have your own money. So I kind of came from one of those oddly conflicted backgrounds, and I chose that path of, I think I'm going to listen to the have your own money piece, because that just seems sensible to me. And she was role modeling that. She had quite a tough life, really. I think it is a new generation of women. And I think you should surround yourself with women who are really supportive. And one of my litmus tests for women being supportive is, if I hear a woman putting me down when I'm actually trying something new, I may not be succeeding at it. And this is where pole dance has been amazing. But the fact that I'm there trying, if I've got women cheering me on, then I go, that's a good woman. If I've got women competing with me and kind of undermining me or gaslighting me, nah. That's just an instant eject out of my group for me. So I've always surrounded myself with women. And I think now, you know, women are much more supportive of other women, but of course you're always going to have jealousies. I guess some women have been conditioned that way, that it's woman against woman. I've never seen life like that. I think it's women together. We're more powerful together. And I think that's why the idea of being in groups of like-minded women, or women with common interests, you know, that can be a really powerful place. And having a few very, you know, good, intimate friends is powerful. But, you know, sometimes we don't always choose. We learn as we grow. We learn as we age. What works, what doesn't work.
Yeah, I've always said too, you'll never get another person put you down when they feel good about themselves. If you get people that will put you down or, you know, try to sabotage you, it says more about them than you. So, but when you're around, you know, a great like-minded, you know, support group, whatever that area that is, they're only going to help lift you up. It's the ones that will start to get a little bit narky or whatever the situation is. They're the ones that are threatened.
Yeah,
that's right. I agree. I totally agree. So what's the old saying that hurt people hurt people?
Yes. I think it's got to be more than 10 years now. I used to go to this women's networking group, and, you know, I was very naive, right? I mean, I go in thinking, oh, you know, women, you know, women support women. So on the surface, they're very nice, very supportive, but the undertones, right, were very gossipy, very bitchy, very, very competitive, right? I mean, all these are, in their own right, they're very strong women because they own their own business. And so I got increasingly uncomfortable. Every time I go in, I just feel like there's something strange, you know, like the vibes. And I even had one person attacking me, like just in my face, you know, like she say things like, oh, I've heard of you. And then she goes on to say what all the things I'm doing wrong. I go, okay. So I walked away, and, you know, it just got really difficult, and I stopped going after a while. It's just not a healthy environment. It's very toxic, and I'm not sure how the scene is like right now, you know, in women's networking, whether that has changed, or are they still feeling insecure and, you know, competitive. I just stayed away, you know, and I started my own networking group, you know, that has more men than women. The women in there, I mean, supportive enough, with each other, but we don't really look at ourselves in our gender roles. It's more like we're all business owners. Yeah, so it's a bit different.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point you're making, is that, we often focus on the gender piece, but this is about common interest, common outcome, common values. And I certainly have lots of men that I hang out with and absolutely adore, who, we have those things in common. And but I think that thing you said about gossip and so on, that's such an important thing, because you have to assume that if someone's gossiping about someone else to you, that they may very well gossip about you to someone else. So that habit of gossip, that's a good tell sign to watch out. And you might really need to manage the amount of information you give that person if you can't move away. So I think there's a lot, people that kind of show you who they are pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And what their focus is going to be. So I think that's a really good piece on watch out for toxicity. And by the way, if you feel uncomfortable, it's funny because I was reading from another woman. She was talking about going to the market without her husband, and she was being harassed by someone, with sexual overtone. And so she was seeking advice from other people. And for me, it was as simple as, if you feel uncomfortable, then you're in an uncomfortable situation. And you need to respond. Don't question yourself. Don't second guess yourself. That's gaslighting in the first degree. Trust your instincts. Trust what you feel. If you feel uncomfortable, move away.
Yeah, absolutely. Our nervous system tells us what to do, and we cannot override it. We have to listen.
Yeah, but I think a lot of girls especially have been taught, oh, well, if someone, when you're a little child, if somebody's mean to you, it's because they like you. I don't understand the logic of that. How does that work? Or
I was always told that if a boy, growing up, if a boy, treated you meanly or, ignored you, it was a sign that he liked you.
What the hell? What the hell? Where's the logic of that? That makes no sense whatsoever.
I know. Well, you're in primary school. You're about 8, 9, or 10 years old, and I know boys can be a little bit more awkward around. But I remember saying something, to my family, and they go, "Oh, Alina, I think that's because he likes you." And I go, "Oh, boys are weird."
Wow. Yeah.
I think that just screws up our whole understanding, right? So we take this into adulthood too, in relationships, and that's why, this bad boy image thing, people go for bad boys because they think that their behavior is a reflection of how much they are loved. And we all fall victim to that.
I've actually never thought about it that way. That's a really nice distinction. That it then turns into the love of the bad boy. He must like me because he's mean to me.
I know. Yeah. And I know, all of our training sessions with Nancy, and she sees, clients, that are in with me, she'll come in and she'll do a training session when I'm, with clients, and always guaranteed she'll stop and she'll comment on how well that person's doing, and she just does it, and she's so genuine with what she does. And people stop and they go, oh my God, because it's not coming from a coach, it's coming from another person, someone completely non-relating. And then you can see their confidence, that it's oh, hang on. Well, and then it's really hard for them to accept a compliment. And Nancy will stop and she'll go, you go, girl, or you go, boy. Whoever it is at the time. And she does, and she's so genuine. And they don't know what to do they, Nancy?
Oh, the women are so funny, because they'll often do one of two things. They'll either go, oh no, it's not that good. Or they'll actually go, oh, but you do it better. And I've had to literally say to women, outside my two approaches, one of them where they say I'm doing it better is, it doesn't impact how I'm doing if you accept that you're doing it well. There isn't a scarcity of doing well in the gym, right? You're in your lane, I'm in my lane. We can both celebrate together. We're both doing great. Yeah. The other thing, I've literally almost had to grab women by the arm and shake them and go, just say thank you. Yeah. It's incredible to me that they just won't acknowledge with a simple thank you and kind of onboard that there has to be pushback.
And men can be like that too, though. And
sure.
I know some of my clients that you would know, the men, and you give them a compliment and they'll go and they'll deflect it. It's all because of such and such, or it's hard. I mean, there's a difference between being humble, and people feel uncomfortable saying thank you.
Yeah.
I know I do. I'm guilty of that. I know you've said to me a few times, you just go say, I paid you a compliment, you say thank you. I'll go, thank you, Nancy.
Of course. Just honor the giver.
Yeah. But in the same token, it was not that long ago, I had a coach and his client approached me, or the coach approached me, one of the trainers, and said, what's your client's name again? The one doing I went, and I said, oh, that's Nancy. And I said, why? And I went, oh, because such and such wants to give her a compliment. Like, she's looking so good. And I don't know if they came up to you that day. I know that they were going to, and noticed on all the changes that you've made. And I wish I'd been there to see.
I think I know who. So we now have a hello, Jim relationship. And in fact, they did give me that compliment and I went there.
Oh, that's nice.
Good. Yeah. So you did say thank you.
Of course. Especially, look, I'm like anybody. I'm like anybody. There's days when I feel quite discouraged. And especially when you're working with your body. Alina will relate to this powerfully. The progress you make, sometimes it's so slow. It feels like you're going backwards. It's that slow. That's been my pole journey, by the way. It feels like I'm going backwards. And then every once in a while, there's a little forward momentum. But boy, am I ever getting the message that progress equals morale. I think that's such a good phrase. How do you measure your progress in anything so you're not at a snail's pace? And maybe it's the same with taking compliments or anything else. That it's a little bit at a time. You kind of reprogram.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you brought that up because you're 68, is that right?
68.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay. And Nancy said to me recently, I'm taking up pole dancing. I went, what? She said, well, why not? And I said, wow. And she pointed out all the reasons. And it's funny because I always used to assume pole dancing is the women who were just a little bit out there that just, I don't know, it just wasn't for me, right? But watching Nancy's journey and her commitment to it and the positions and the different stages and her strength and where she's at and her reason why for doing it completely changed my mind about the pole dancing, as in it's not the pole dancing with the stripper pole, etc. It was very athletic, and I'm not putting the sport down by any means. It was just my interpretation of it, and if that was something I wanted to do, it wasn't appealing for me at the time. But when I look at, and it's still not, it's just changed my view on it. As far as I'm not into high boots and stuff. But I appreciate women who do. But watching Nancy and listening to her and about her workouts and what she has to do, and you are amazing, Nancy. You're like a dog with a bone. You just give up, you give it all, and you're incredible to watch. And it's been a real pleasure to see you excel in other areas. Obviously, the gym is going really well for you, but if you didn't have that initial strength phase and that component, there's lots of things you probably wouldn't have done, and stepped out away from and tried if you didn't have that initially. But you're just giving it a go, and I've just watched you completely transform, not just physically, but also on other levels as well, your emotional and spirituality. I know that you'll just give everything a go, but there's a real commitment to this, and you share your difficulties that where you've been stuck, you've been burnt out, you haven't been able to get into certain positions, to now then by persevering, and then just go, oh my God. And then you talk about the 20-something females up there that you've just got so much admiration for.
Oh my God.
So share a little bit with Shamala, because I love hearing the stories and your journey. It's been amazing. So how long have you been doing it? For a couple of months now, have you?
I started doing pole in I think November, and it's been a really interesting journey. So I got into the pole because I wanted something that was challenging, low impact, fun, I don't know if it was the little out there that appealed to me, but it just happened in a conversation that somebody mentioned it, and I thought, what the heck? What the heck? I'm up for something. I think I was feeling a little bit stalled at the gym as well, that I'd kind of hit this point where I wasn't enjoying my workouts as much. And so I just felt like I needed to bring something else to the table, like mix it up a bit. And what I found at the pole studio has been beyond my wildest dreams, because I got all that, but I've also gotten this incredible community of women. And what's been interesting to me about pole, where I think a lot of people would think about it as, that's that thing those strippers do. And by the way, I have endless amounts of admiration for any woman who can strip on a pole. You can't pay them enough money. And, honest to God, wow. But what I found was this incredible community of women of all shapes, all sizes, all ages, cheering each other on. And so a woman steps onto the pole and she gets something or doesn't get it, and everybody's behind her going, yeah, come on, you can. And that's something that wow. And particularly when you're dealing with something with your body, where it's easy to fall into the body image piece about, oh, you're not thin enough. Oh my God, you never, you got fat legs, you got a big bum. We're scantily clad, and nobody cares if you have a big bum. The question is, can you get your bum up that pole? It is. So it's all about what your body can do, not what your body looks like. Yeah. And that is unbelievable in a group of women that we just don't talk about.
Yeah. That comes back down to what we were talking about initially about the support. You've got the right support people, in your corner, and you'll just excel. That's a prime example. Like you said, it's all different shapes and sizes, ages, levels, it doesn't matter, but they're all there cheering each other on. And then you've got people that maybe have been too scared, with body image or confidence, or for whatever reason, they've just been too scared to attempt anything like that. All of a sudden, they've got the support, and this cheer from other women, encouraging them to give it a go. And the next minute, that's the difference between staying stuck where you are and where you want to go.
Very heartfelt support.
Yeah. And Shamala, I think for you, that for me, that's the power. It's always been the power in coaching, is you have somebody on your goals, your desires, what you want to, where you want to wind up, and helping you find different pathways. And I mean, every pathway is going to have some degree of blocker. Yeah. So, being able to confront those things with somebody who really is your cheerleader, but someone who can listen to the hard stuff with you. There's a lot of power in that having the right coaches, right collective. Yeah,
absolutely. A community of women.
Yeah, well, community of women and men. Which just in the pole studio, we don't have any men except one instructor who's quite amazing. You could understand why men don't hit the pole as a regular thing. There's one place where we have anatomy on our side. Yes.
For our viewers and listeners, if you have been thinking of doing pole dancing, go for it.
Yeah, every woman I think should step on the pole once in her life, because the liberation that comes from that is phenomenal, and the fun of it. It really is a lot of fun. But I guess the core message for me has always been, age doesn't define what you do. That's a construct from somebody else's world. You decide what you do. Yeah. And you don't know what you can do until you've actually done it. Because I have a lot of people say to me, I'll never get there. My response is, how do you know that? Yeah. You don't know that, because you're not doing it. Like, go do it, and then you'll know. And if you can't do it, okay. To limit yourself before you've even taken an attempt that's somebody else speaking. That's not real. Age is not a barrier. There may be barriers, physical barriers, but age is not the barrier. This is the barrier. It's in here. So whatever it is that you want to do, I'm a big fan of just go and do it. Try it. And show up long enough that you actually have a good litmus test of whether you can or can't. And look, it's probably 3 months or so before you really know. Yeah. Some things may be longer. But if you like it, do it. And if it's in your mind, I don't care how old you are. There's another woman's joining me finally at 67. But, there's there's women in the gym. Alina's training a woman who's 73.
Why not?
You're alive.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting you should say that, because recently that 73-year-old, I said, who said it's too late to build muscles at 73? You know, she's got arms on her like it's
Gorgeous.
right?
Gorgeous.
And she's, you know, just beautiful. And I have another 73-year-old, you know, lady as well that, you know, she's on my website. She's next to, I think she was 70, and the lady next to her was, so there was a 30-year difference anyway. And to look at them, you know, doing a chin up, you know, put a photo of them side by side, you wouldn't realize that, you know, there's 30 years difference. And the younger one would say to the older one, oh, I just want to be like you, you know, and then the older one will say to the younger one, I wish I started. It's all right.
Yeah, well, lesson learned.
You know, and it's interesting because I'll get a lot of people that will come to me saying they can't do this, they can't do that, they're too old, and then when you're old like me, you watch your body will start to deteriorate. And then just because out of curiosity, because I'm intrigued and it's my job as a coach, you know, I said it to me, I had to do bloods the other day. So the lady had no idea what I do or anything like that. It was just a person to come in to get their bloods done. And then she said, well, when you get to my age, And I went, because I'm thinking, she doesn't look that old. And I said, well, how old are you? She says, 50. And I said, well, stop that right now. I'm 55. So every time that you say that, you're making me feel old. And I'm not feeling old.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and she looked unhealthy.
Yeah.
You know, like, yes, she was overweight, but she looked like she was a person that didn't move her body a lot, you know, and, you know, for whatever reason. And I think, God, I meet so many old people who are young. But then one of the common things people say they can't do because is it too late to start? It's never too late to do anything. You just start. It's too late when you decide not to give it a go.
Yeah.
And you wish you'd look back on, you know, with regret. You wish that you know, had tried it when you were younger.
Yeah.
So, you know, it is really good to see, you know, these people, you know, excelling, because it doesn't matter, boots and all, whatever age, you know, you're better off trying than sitting back wondering.
I've heard women say they don't want to exercise because they don't want to look muscular. And I told them, it's going to take a lot for you to build those muscles to look muscular, you know. Simple exercises is not going to make look like a man, you know, so you have nothing to worry.
I know, that's so true, Shamala, because I get that. Oh, God, because I would say, if it was that easy, I'd be out of a job. It's just like, you know, the thing is I don't want to bulk up. Yeah, like, it just takes a long time to do that. You know, people wanting to have more muscle will appreciate how long it takes to get muscle.
Oh, yeah.
It can't come quick enough. It's such a slow process.
Yeah. It's not that easy.
No, and then you define I tend to break it down when I do consult with those particular women, and they like, the latest one is that they'd like to have a Pilates body. And I said, well, what's a Pilates body? Anyway, we work it down. They just want a little bit of definition. I said, that's exactly what you'll get.
Yeah.
You know, but the thing is, comes down to their food as well. So eat crappy food, you know, you're not going to get results. So, you know, they're just comparing with themselves with the people out there, not knowing their story or the background or anything like that. So I know comparison's also a thief of joy, but also you don't know their story. You don't know where that person's come from and what they've done. They might have been at it for years and years. They just didn't pick up the weights and to get that, you know, get those results in 8 weeks.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for being...
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I hope that was helpful to you.
Very, very helpful.
Excellent.
I really enjoyed it. And I think it's very inspiring. And I hope our viewers and listeners will be equally inspired, you know, by everything you've shared. Thank you.
Yes, me too. And enjoy. And it's wonderful to have met you.
Likewise.
Maybe we'll have the serendipity of meeting face to face one day.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so
too. It'll be fun. Meanwhile, be well, healthy aging.
Thank you.
Good adventures. I'll see you soon.
I'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.